You are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. It's time for On Purpose with Purpose with Evie Hanover.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the On Purpose with Purpose podcast. I am super excited for you to be here today. We have such an incredible guest with us. We have Dr. Ike, who is the president and CEO of Ministries, as well as a senior pastor. So welcome onto our podcast.
Evie, I'm thrilled to be able to be here with you. So
Thank you.
I'm excited for today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So I just want to start off with asking what your testimony is.
My testimony is that I didn't grow up in a Christian home, didn't grow up around faith. And so I didn't become a Christian until I was in my early 20s. And then I had an experience where Jesus Christ came into my life, made all the difference in the world. And about 2 years after that, I felt the call to ministry. And so I've been in ministry ever since. So over 50 years now of serving the Lord.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So how old were you when Jesus kind of met you?
22 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Growing up in downtown Atlanta, and again, my family wasn't church-oriented, and so, of course, it was a girl that got me oriented toward faith and started going to church with her, not too far from the location where we're sitting right now, and became a believer, and it changed everything. And after I felt the call to ministry, I attended Mercer University to be able to get my BA degree, then went on and did a master's and a doctorate at Luther Rice Seminary, and now serve on the board of Liberty University, where I've been serving for the last 30 years.
Wow, that's so amazing. Yeah. So as you've kind of been within your faith journey and you've been walking with God for, you said 50 years?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. What has been like your favorite Bible verse, your favorite passage, or what's something that you've kind of been leaning on as your faith has continued?
Wow, there's so many. There really are. When I think about the Older Testament, I think about Psalms 37:4. Delight thyself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. If your delight is right, then your desires are right. And that's a really wonderful promise from the Old Testament. And so I love that particular verse. And I think a lot of people love Romans 8:28. Because we all go through so many different things in our life. But if we're called by the Lord, then He makes all things work to the good. He doesn't say all things are good, but He says, I'll make all things work to the good for those that are called apart according to His purpose, which is what your whole podcast is about, is having a purpose.
Yes. That's amazing. So you talked about how you felt like the call to ministry about when you were 22 years old.
Right.
And I just want to kind of walk through what that looked like for you, because I'm sure that wasn't just like I'm going to become a pastor. Let me just do it really quickly. So what did that journey look like for you becoming a pastor?
It really was a work in progress. At the time, I was a disc jockey. That's the world that I was living in. And so being able to do concerts and to do that type of work, I really enjoyed it. Was actually here in the Smyrna area at 2 different stations. And then the last station I was with was Z93 down in Atlanta. And after I became a Christian, and then a couple of years later, then wanting to be able to pursue vocational ministry, someone told me, well, if you've been called to preach, then you are also called to prepare. And so that meant going to college. Well, that was a bit difficult for me because I had not been a good student in high school. After high school, I was the first person in my family to try to even attend college. And I went to Kennesaw Junior College and flunked out within the first year. Oh, wow. And so I didn't have a good academic record. And so because of that, then I become a Christian. Then I want to go to college, and they have these really terrible things called transcripts. And it has all of your academic failures that are there. And I had no academic successes. And so that was prohibiting me from being able to have the opportunity to attend college. And it was difficult for me to get in. But then just through some miraculous circumstances, I was able to get into Mercer University. And the difference that Jesus made was that at Mercer, a 4-year college, I graduated in 2 years and 1 quarter, and I graduated magna cum laude. So a lot of the academic and everything else that had been kind of buried inside of me really came to fruition when I became a believer and started applying myself. And so it changed the whole paradigm. So Mercer University grad, very proud of my opportunity to be able to go there.
So I actually met you through an Addo internship, which is a company that's local to the Smyrna area. And we went to Ministries to serve for the day. And I want to kind of dive into that Mercer story a little bit because you told the story of you meeting someone on the stairs that kind of pushed you to actually be able to get into Mercer. So could you kind of go into that story a little bit?
Yeah, so I've got this horrible academic record. I'm not going to be able to get into university, and the reason I know that is because they sent me 3 different notifications that I was not going to get into the university. But one day I'm driving in my car. I hear a story on WSB radio. They said, this year college enrollment is dramatically down. Because of that, colleges have lowered their standards, and there are many students getting into college who would have normally not qualified. And I thought, boy, that sounds like opportunity knocking. And so next day, I got some money together, and I went out to Mercer University in Atlanta, and I went to the registration desk, and there were all these people that were gathered around. But I noticed there was one guy that seemed to be in charge. Now, by this time, I'm 23 years old. And I'm watching this one guy. He's got on a name tag, and it says Randy, registrar. So I made sure I got in his line. And so I finally get up there and everything, and I tell Randy, hey, I want to enroll in some classes. He said, well, have you applied? And I went, yes, I've applied. And he said, well, did everything go well? And my closest thing I could come to the truth was there was a snafu with the paperwork, which meant they sent back and said, no, thank you. You're not getting into this school, a rejection letter. And so I said, well, there was a snafu. And he said, well, let me go get your transcripts. And I said, no, Randy, let's not do that. Let's just you and I work this out, mano a mano. And he said, well, I have to get your transcripts. And it's one of the most embarrassing days of my life. Back in those days, Evie, everybody was gathered around the central desk trying to get registered for classes, which is what was going on. And in the middle of all this, Randy walks from the back, and he's got my transcript, and he looks at it, and he goes, and it's this long legal document back in those days. Nothing was, on a computer. And he goes, let me make sure I've got this right. You attended Kennesaw Junior College for a year, and all you passed was 2 hours of PE. And I went, yeah, basketball and soccer. And he went, sir, you're not going to get in this university. There's no way. It was probably at that point in my life the most defeated day that I'd ever had, because I had a church that was creating a job for me. I was going to become their janitor and youth director, and it was going to allow me to be able to go to college. And I'm thinking this is finally going to be the change in my life that I'm needing. And so now I've just been told, you're not going to get into school. It's not going to happen. And so I'm walking down a hall. And as I go down that hall, I'm going to go down a set of steps. And there's a basement to this building. So there's a set of steps coming up from the basement. I'm walking down a set of steps, and there's a common landing area. And there's these 4 sets of glass doors. And so just as I get down, and I'm visibly upset, that this hasn't worked out. My heart's broken. So I step onto this landing, and this lady coming up from the basement steps on the landing at the same time. And for this brief moment, we were facing each other. I mean, it was just a moment. And she looks at me, and she's a rather tall lady, and probably in her mid-50s or 60s. And so she turns to me, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And normally I would have said, "Oh, I'm great. I'm fine," like you. Right. And just moved on my way. But that day, I guess because of what I had just been through, I was just, very transparent. I looked at her and I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "May I ask you why?" And I said, "Because I want to go to school here and they won't let me." And she goes, "Can I ask you who they are?" And I said, "Well, we'll start with Randy." That's why I never wear a name tag. It's too easy to get identified. Then somebody like me will throw you under the bus, right? And so she kind of laughed. She goes, "Well, yeah, that's our registrar." And I went, "Yes, ma'am, I found that out." She goes, "Do you have a minute?" And I go, well, sure. She says, walk back up with me. So we walked back up from this stairwell. We walked back up to this little setting area, and there was like a Queen Anne chair, high back, and she sat down in that chair, and she laced her fingers together like this, and she leaned forward with her elbows on her knees, and she kind of leaned into my space like this. And she asked me to do something no one had ever asked me to do, and now I've asked thousands of people to do for me over the years. She said, would you tell me your story? And I said, I don't have a story. She goes, everybody has a story. She goes, why are you here? And I tried to explain to her. I said, well, I said, I've had this experience. I've become a Christian. And then a couple of years later, I felt this desire to be able to go to college, and I felt this calling into ministry. And I said, everyone told me that if I'm going to preach, I should prepare. And I said, I wasn't a good student. I said, my parents had a fifth grade education. My dad worked in rock quarries all of his life. We came from rural Appalachia, North Carolina, to downtown Atlanta. It was a culture shock for them. That's why they didn't go to church there. That's why it was not a part of my life. And so she listened intently. And when I finished, she said, do you have a couple more minutes? I go, certainly. She said, come with me. We go walking down the hall, and I thought we were going to get Randy in trouble. But we walked right on past Randy. And we walked down to this door, and it was marked Dean. And I thought, oh, wow, she knows the dean of the university. And she opened up the door, and she walked in, and she went behind the desk. She sat down in the chair, and she motioned for me to have a seat. And of all the people that I could have met in a stairwell leaving that university was the dean of the university, and her name was Dr. Jean Hendricks. She is legendary in the family of Mercer University. She and her brother, Joe, incredible professors that are in their Hall of Fame. That's who I met in the stairwell. She looked across the desk. She said, you're sincere, aren't you? And I said, yes, ma'am, I really am. She said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. She said, I'm going to be your patron. I didn't understand what that term meant. I said, what does that mean? She said, well, that means you're going to get into the university under my name and not just yours. And I went, great, because mine wasn't working out very well at all. She said, okay, there's 3 things you're going to have to do. And I said, okay. She said, number 1, every time you get your grades, the next set of eyes that see them are going to be mine. I said, okay. She said, number 2, you're going to come into the university on probation. And I went, well, what does that mean? She said, well, it's restricted. It'd be like if you made bad grades. And I said, well, I could probably make a few bad grades. Give me a little more runway, right? She goes, no. She said, you can do this. And then she self-corrected. She said, no, you will do this. She said, the 3rd thing is, I want to see your face every week. I want to see you every week. Whether you catch me in a hallway after a convocation, I want to see you. And her whole thing was she wanted me to understand she was going to be in my space. And what she did that day in the stairwell, I always tell people, I do leadership. That's what I do. And I tell people all the time, the greatest leadership lesson I ever learned was in the 7th grade as a school safety patrol person.
Everyone's dream.
Absolutely. I had the white sash, the blue badge. I got the rank of captain, I want you to know. And so I loved being the school safety patrol guy, right? And we had a motto. And I always ask in groups, does anyone know the motto? And someone yelled out one time, stop, drop, and roll. That's if you're on fire. School safety patrol, no, we don't need that one. It's stop, look, and listen. If you can do those 3 things, you can change your relationships like crazy. Stop what you're doing, especially in your hyper-connected world, because you've been raised in a world where you've always had the smartphone. You've always had this hyper-connectivity. And yet, we're producing one of the loneliest generations ever. And that's sad, but it's that hyper-connectivity. Sometimes you have to stop what you're doing. You have to look at someone and then listen to their story and listen empathetically, lean into that story. literally on that landing, in that stairwell, that's what she did for me. And she changed my life. I mean, completely and totally. And so our relationship over the years deepened. She had never married, so she didn't have children. I became like a son to her, and I had the honor that when she passed away, that I conducted her funeral. Never dreamed in a million years. And several of my mentors now, I've had that privilege of being a part of their homegoing. A man named Zig Ziglar changed my life because of a book he wrote called See You at the Top. And after becoming a Christian, the first goal that I ever set for myself was to get a college degree. So Zig Ziglar, who wrote that book, then became my mentor and friend. We co-authored a book together. And when he passed away, I was there to help conduct his funeral. Dr. Hendricks, I helped to conduct her funeral. And just yesterday, in this community that we live in Cobb County, I was a part of the homegoing of Dr. Nelson Price, the longtime pastor at Roswell Street Baptist Church. And he was a mentor to me as well and a friend. So, you know, I look at all the different ways that God brings our life together, and he does these different things. And some people would say, well, wow, that meeting in that stairwell, what a coincidence. You know what a coincidence is? That's when God chooses to remain anonymous, and he just makes things work out perfectly. So I loved getting to meet you when you came over with Addo, because, you know, you were that guy that I love over there named Kevin Scott.
Yes.
That I just absolutely think the world of, and just one of the finest people that I know. And so when Kevin brings in people, and then when Evie says, hey, can you be there on a Friday morning to do a podcast? The answer is absolutely. So it's good to get to be with you.
Yes, I'm so excited. And the craziest thing is when we were there serving, you kind of came in, you told a couple stories. I was like, okay, I have to get this guy on my podcast. I mean, it was like an immediate, and I hadn't even started yet, but I knew this was in the works, this was upcoming. I needed some big people that were going to come in and really make an impact. And so I walked up to Kevin Paul Scott and I said, hey, is Dr. Ike in the back, or is he still here? Yeah. Can I go and speak to him? And they were like, yes, let's see what we can do. So somebody goes back there, they figure out that you're still there, they come back and get me. And so I walk back to your room, which is a huge office. I wasn't expecting that. But I sit down with you and we start talking about this. And one of the things that I remember the most is when I went to leave, you said, hold on, let me hand you something.
Right.
And I was like, what is he about to hand me? He actually gave me a devotional that you wrote with Zig Ziglar.
Correct.
And you had no idea about this, but I'd actually been praying about having a devotional for a long time.
Great.
It was truly one of the craziest moments because I felt like I was not spending time with God in the morning. I always kind of made excuses on, well, I read at night. I'm not really a morning person. But I kind of knew in the back of my head, like, I needed some devotional. I needed something. And for you to hand me that, it was really a moment of like, wow, God, you're really working in many ways. I was coming just to talk to you about the podcast, and you ended up giving me something that I'd been asking God for a while. So it was really incredible.
Well, that's very affirming. Thank you.
Yeah.
So here's the deal: a daily quiet time. Well, I was a youth minister. I thought I would always be a youth minister, but there's this terrible thing called aging. And at some point, the kids are going, no, we don't think we need to talk to this guy. But I always emphasize the value of a daily quiet time, that's something that's so important. And so what happens a lot of times is that as you begin to mature in your faith and you get involved in all these different things, this is especially true for people who are like teaching a Sunday school class or they're a pastor, all of a sudden they'll start substituting a daily devotional for, well, I'm preparing to teach this class. I'm preparing, you said you were a Sunday school teacher. I'm preparing for this on Sunday, so I'll just let this be my devotional time.
Right.
Don't ever let that happen. Always set aside some sacred space. And there's something about, doing it the first thing in the morning. I have a practice that I do that at night before I go to sleep, I try to think of what are 5 things today that I was really thankful for. What were 5 intersections in my life today that as I go to sleep, I can be in the thankful mode. And then when I wake up in the morning, and I think of 5 things. The first thing I think of, because I work at a place where we have a 136 bed homeless shelter, is I think how thankful I am for my bed at home, because I work with people all the time who don't have a bed. And if it weren't for Must Ministry doing what it's doing, and Evie, when you begin to meet some of these people and you hear their stories, it will absolutely just grip your heart, because things can happen in a person's life. There are twists and turns, and it can change everything. And when people have kind of this superior attitude, like, well, that could never happen to me. Right. That's the furthest thing from the truth. So the Bible says, beware where you stand, lest you fall. Because any of us can hit hard times and difficult times in our life, health issues, other things that can absolutely devastate us financially, and we can find ourselves in a bad place. So every morning, the first thing I thank God for is I woke up today. If you don't think today's important, try missing it. It's called death. And so, it's very important. I just woke up. I woke up in my own bed. I always look straight up and think, I've got a ceiling over my head, because here's what I know. There's a group of people that are going to come into Must today that are not in our shelter, and they live in the woods. And about 20% of those people are military veterans, which breaks my heart.
Wow.
And so those are probably the first 3 things that I think of. And then right beside me every morning is my wife. And so I thank the Lord for my wife, and I thank the Lord for my children. So, I wear a lot of bracelets. So I've got a wife, that's the red one, and I have 2 daughters, right? So that's them. And then over on this arm, I have to dig through here, then I've got 2 more bracelets that are over here. Can you guess why I wear 2 bracelets? 2 granddaughters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got all females, a mother-in-law, a wife, 4 female rescue cats. I'm a minority in a sorority. And I love every minute of it. I'm a girl dad, and absolutely adore being a girl dad. So I'm surrounded by all these females. Every day, I'm so thankful. I have a granddaughter that's in the 2nd grade at Hickory Hills in Marietta. And then I have a granddaughter that is a senior over at Marietta High School this year. And so she's trying to get all of that college thing. And I tell her, do not use my name at Kennesaw State. I flunked out. By the way,
maybe she can use mine.
Exactly. Well, I had my oldest daughter did graduate from KSU.
Okay.
And I got to do the commencement address one year at graduation.
Wow.
I thought, hey, that's not bad for somebody that flunked out of this place. I've had people laugh and say, oh, you probably didn't try. And I go, yeah, I did. I was trying really hard. Wow. It just didn't work. I was barely 17 years old when I went to college. My mom sent me to school early and lied about my age. And so I was extremely young, just wasn't ready for it. But then when that time came, having the experience with Christ, then really starting college at 23, I always felt like I was a little bit behind there. So I've always had this, push to be in a motivation, and especially then after reading Zig's book, See You at the Top. Be a great book for anyone starting out and going, hey, I want to do something really unique and special in my life. Man, I tell you, any of Zig Ziglar's books would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I also want to touch on, I feel like a lot of people know about Must Ministries. My mom has partnered with y'all for about 10 years. She did a Must Ministries Summer Lunch Supply Drive literally for the past 10 years, which has been such a fun but always very long weekend, right? Because we're working really hard. So how did you guys come up with Must Ministries? How did that even start?
Well, you guys are those United Methodist folks are the ones that came up with it. Now, my background is Baptist, so I tell people that Methodists are just Baptists that can read and write, and we're so proud of y'all. So Methodists started Must Ministries almost 55 years ago now. We're in right at the end of our 54th year. And the way that it started was a youth ministry project. You know, like you doing this podcast, you never know what's going to come out of this podcast. And you never know who you're going to meet, all the twists and turns that you're going to see with what you're doing. So there was a group of students and a youth minister, Wayne Williams and his wife, that were at Powers Ferry Road United Methodist Church. And they had some senior adults that they wanted to be able to help. And so the two main groups that they wanted to help, and you may not even understand the second term, were senior adults and hippies. Hippies were the rock and roll people of that generation. They wanted to be able to help feed them and to be able to take care of them. And so that's why Must Ministries was started, was those two groups. And now you look at it, 1971 to now, it's been remarkable.
How did you kind of get involved with Must Ministries? What is your motivation behind the importance of giving in your community?
I came to Must Ministries and to a knowledge of it when I moved to Cobb County to plant a church. I'm the founding pastor of North Star Church in the Kennesaw-Acworth area. And so when we started the church, we wanted to go deep with some different groups with volunteers. We were meeting in a high school, North Cobb High School, so we didn't have a building to invite people to. But we did immediately grow rapidly. The first Sunday we had 365 people show up, and the church just blossomed. So we said, we got a lot of people coming. Let's get them involved in the community, because that was the whole idea of North Star, was don't go plant a church, go reach a city. And so we were very aggressive outside the walls of the church doing things. So we were looking for great organizations that we could help to resource. We could help give money, and we could help give volunteers. And those are essential to have in any nonprofit organization and in churches as well. So we started working, and we started looking for who are organizations with a great reputation. One of them is called Cobb Family Resources and CFR. And they're still around. Melanie Kagan is their CEO. She does a phenomenal job. That organization is absolutely terrific in helping families. Then we also partnered with Calvary Children's Home, because they were taking care of kids that had lost their parents. They were in an orphan situation. And so we adopted every child. Different family would adopt children. So we went deep with them. And the third was Must Ministries. And I wasn't familiar with Must. I was from the south side of Atlanta, where I pastored for 20 years. And so coming to Cobb, didn't know Must, but when we were doing this research, Must was the one that bubbled to the top, along with the other two. So we started investing people there. And that's how I first got to know Must. But then an interesting twist happened in my life. I had a company that I was doing some work for. I do leadership training, and I work with a lot of corporate clients. And there was one particular corporate client that I've been working with that said, we would like for you to come to work for us. Now, I know what I'm called to do, be a minister. And so here's a company saying, we'd like for you to come and work with us, and we want you to actually be a part of our staff. I had never been in corporate America in my life, but it was intriguing what they wanted to do. They wanted to create an environment of a company that was a best place to work in America. And of course, I asked the CEO when he's pitching this idea to me, I said, well, who makes that determination? He said, great question. He said, it's actually Forbes magazine makes that distinction. And so he said, there's the Great Places to Work Institute in San Francisco that applies all of this science, and they research all of these different organizations. And he said, and then every year in the January issue of this magazine, they show the 100, Fortune magazine, the 100 best places to work in America. Now, I said, is that like 100 small and 100 medium and 100 large and 100 X? He goes, no, at that time, only 100 companies. And so he said, I want us to be good enough to be in there. And I said, well, what makes a place a great place to work? And he never hesitated. He said, if the people who work there say it is. If they say we're a great company, then you're a great company. So he wanted me to come in honestly, and create a culture, the way a church takes care of everyone. What if there was a company that took care of everyone? And so I got to go there, and for the next 8 years of my life, I was involved with that company. And yeah, we did make Fortune's list, and we got as high as number 14 in the nation on
Wow.
that list of the 100 companies. And while I was there, Evie, there was an event. They just celebrated the 20th anniversary of it. I don't know, a celebration, a recognition is more the right term. It was called Hurricane Katrina. And when Hurricane Katrina happened, it was devastating to New Orleans and all along the Gulf Coast. And a lot of people got repositioned into the Atlanta area because it was devastated, absolutely devastated. And they started looking for organizations that could help those people, and they reached out to Must Ministries. Now, I'm in the corporate world. I'm pastoring still North Star Church as well. And now here they have this need, and they reached out to us at the company I was working for called Home Bank and said, can you send volunteers to help this place called Must Ministries? And I went, absolutely. I'm already doing it through my church, and now we started doing it through our company. And so over the next several months, we sent out volunteers. We had about 1,400 people working for us. So we would send out teams of people to work in the warehouses and to help all these people that got repositioned. The irony of all this story is that's what took Must Ministries from more of just being like a mom and pop organization to a much larger organization, but even more efficient organization, because they were taking care of so many people. And that's why today, Must is the 38th largest nonprofit in all of Atlanta and in the state of Georgia.
Wow.
And you're talking about nonprofits being hospitals like CHOA.
Right.
You're talking about the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. All of those are nonprofits. Woodruff Arts Center. And Must occupies that space now in the top 50 largest nonprofits. And so Hurricane Katrina was that trigger. So there I was helping on the church side, and then all of a sudden there I was helping on the corporate side. And again, some people say, what a coincidence. That's when God chooses to remain anonymous. And he just put us on.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hate to wrap it up quickly, but
Are you
our
kidding?
time is about up. Yeah.
This was awesome.
Yeah,
Way to
thank
go.
you. Thank you
So I
so
got to
much.
ask you a question,
Okay,
interviewer.
okay.
Why did you want to do the podcast?
Yes. So when I started working at Smyrna First, I'm currently an intern right now, and very excited. I've gone to this church my whole life, and I was getting the official tour, right? I kind of know everything within the church, but I was walking around, and we came into this one room, and I looked in, and I was like, is that a podcast room? And they were like, yeah. And I said, can I start one? Thinking they'd be like, no, are you kidding me? And they were like, sure. I said, oh, okay. So I started thinking kind of what I wanted to call it. I'd been up several nights, it felt like, just thinking, when you can't shut your brain down. And I really, really wanted to reach people, mainly the younger generation, and just kind of remind them that God has put them where they are for a reason. God has created you on purpose with a purpose. And so I really wanted to start this podcast just to have the gospel spread in a different way, because my senior year of high school, I was driving 40 minutes every morning. And so I was trying to figure out a way that I could kind of devote my time to God without, being on my phone or reading.
Right.
Like I couldn't, I was driving. So I got into listening to podcasts, and I really felt like this is something that I need to give back to the world because it did so much for me.
That's awesome. So one last question for you, Evie.
Yes.
Dream guest to have on the podcast.
Okay, my dream guest would be Sadie Robertson Huff.
Yeah, met Sadie.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my
Met
gosh.
her. They do the big Winter Jam tour.
Yes.
And I've spoken at Winter Jam a lot through the years for them. The guys that started it are some of my best friends. A group called New Song originally started Winter Jam. And so they recognized Must and did a big offering for us one night, down at State Farm. And Sadie was one of the guests. And so, yeah, I have my picture with her in the whole bit.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I wanted to meet Uncle Si.
Oh
I
my
was
gosh,
more
yes.
I was more excited about
Yes.
Si, right?
Yes, no, he's so funny. Have you seen Duck Dynasty: The Revival? Have you been
Of
watching?
course I have.
I love that show.
I'm
I love their whole
into
family.
arts. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, she is my dream guest. So
Dream guest.
Yes.
That would be awesome for you.
Awesome. It would be
Yeah,
amazing.
she does a lot for us at Liberty University.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for
Thank
being here,
you.
man. This was such an amazing conversation. I hope you guys learned a lot from Dr. Ike like I did. But I can't wait for everything that's coming up soon. And again, so thankful for you. And I hope to catch you guys on the next podcast episode. Thank you so much. Have an amazing, amazing day.